you got to start somewhere. So it's good to start with a lone voice, but a lone voice probably can't accomplish.
Yeah.
But if industries are coming together and working together, I think you start to see real change and many, many more enterprises, social enterprises, tech companies, whatever it is, rising from the ashes of this sort of consumer, ultra import driven economy.
Yeah.
Not to make a big...
Yeah.
You are listening to In Good Company, a podcast that explores the lives, businesses, careers, and advocacies of people who want to create positive impact in the world.
If you're someone who's looking for inspiration, positive stories, how-tos, and opportunities to start a business or pursue a career with meaning and purpose, this podcast is for you.
And we won't just be talking about the good and inspiring stuff.
We'll be talking about the real stuff, which means that we'll get into the gritty, grimy, and yes, juicy details about trying to do good in a world where doing good is still a bit of an afterthought.
This podcast is designed to share inspiring stories, but at the same time encourage anyone. But while doing good in a big way is challenging, it is possible, and there are concrete and actionable steps to do so.
So, if you want to do good, you're in good company.
I'm Reese Fernandez-Ruiz, co-founder and president of Rags to Riches.
And I'm Tom Graham, author of the book The Genius of the Poor and co-founder of the social tourism enterprise Make a Difference Travel.
And
this is In Good Company. Our guest on today's show is an American from Chicago who's got involved in the fashion industry in the Philippines, despite not having, by his own admission, any idea about fashion. When Chris Torrance arrived in this country, he'd recently completed a master's degree in development studies and came here eager to volunteer for an NGO. Much to his own surprise, he's ended up starting his own business here called Ambension Silk, which creates artisanal and handmade eri silk products in partnership with community members from Gawad Kalinga. What I particularly liked about this interview was hearing how Chris has been able to overcome his own lack of expertise in certain key areas, such as farming and fashion, for example, through finding willing partners along the value chain. From community partners to fashion designers, it's inspiring to hear how many people have bought into the Ambension Silk mission to revitalize the textile industry in the Philippines. So, without waiting any longer, let's get on with the show. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Joining us.
Hi, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for having me.
All right, Chris, let's kick off the first question, right? So I've known you a few years. You grew up just outside Chicago, right?
Correct.
And I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but you don't strike me as the most avid follower of fashion in a personal capacity, right?
Right.
You're totally not going to take that the wrong way.
Okay. We're good. We're good.
Okay.
We're good.
I see where this is going.
So what do you tell all your friends back home, right, in Chicago? Are they a little bit miffed when you go home? You were home last month and you told them what you're doing in the Philippines. You've set up a sustainable fashion brand, in a sense, right? You're trying to develop the textile industry through eri silk. Are they a little bit miffed by what you're doing and how you ended up here in the Philippines? And what do you tell them?
I guess miffed is a Britishism. It's kind of to confused, maybe. That's more what I get is a bit of confusion. My friends really could care less about fashion, like you're mentioning. If you could see me, listeners, you would understand.
We'll send you some photos.
Yeah, we'll post it all on Facebook.
But the process, once I start explaining, because I would say most people have no idea how silk is made. So just explaining the process, the fact that we encompass a whole value chain from raising the food for the silkworms, rearing the silkworms, harvesting the silk, processing the silk, and weaving a fabric, that's what seems more fascinating. The fashion end, which honestly, for me, isn't the most exciting part of the process. I really trust the expertise of others to tell me what's quote-unquote beautiful, because that's not what my eye is for. The details in the weaving or trying to innovate and create new ways to raise the worms in a safer environment, that's more my forte. And that's also what, I feel like I can relate a bit more articulately without people being able to see the worms or see the weaving. So when I'm in Chicago, the actual process is what gets them excited. Oh, that's so cool. I've never even heard of that. I didn't know that existed. Yeah. For our investment team, so people who are involved in the business, that's where actually feeling the fabric. We've got a group of Filipino-American investors who've been supporting this business for a long time, but most of them are based full-time in Chicago. So they see pictures, they hear stories and all that, but they haven't actually touched the product that they've been investing in. So going back and meeting with them and having them touch it and hearing repeatedly, wait, we wove this? And I'm like, well, you didn't weave anything. But you know, our team of talented artisans in the farm, yes, they wove this by hand. And that's where sort of the light bulb clicks on that, wow, this is something real and it's a real product and a real fabric. So sort of both ends of the spectrum, being excited about what silkworms are and also being excited about a finished product.
Wow, I love worms. I know that's a weird thing to say in the beginning. And I love fashion. But I am wondering, like, for someone who got to the Philippines and who's now doing this, how did you stumble upon this industry and upon the product?
Stumble is actually a good word.
Is it? Okay.
So our business is incubating at the Galakalinga Enchanted Farm in Angat, Bulacan. I was already at the farm for about 3 months. I was doing some youth programming. I was working with the management team there on farm operations. And a couple women who were Filipino Americans from Chicago came to the farm looking for a tour. Now, anybody who knows how the farm works, you know, these women are from Chicago. I'm from Chicago. So, hey, Chris, stop what you're doing. You got to tour them. It's Chicago. Talk about Chicago. So I take them through the farm, sort of the generic farm tour. You know, I don't know why they're there, so I'm giving them general basis, trying to cover everything that's going on at the farm. And at the end of it, they say, hey, we're here looking to start this silk business. We have an idea. We've got access to these silkworms. You clearly understand how the farm works, how this ecosystem operates, and you also understand what American investors would expect. You know, are you interested in helping us start this? Because I knew nothing about silkworms or cassava farming, or silkworms eat cassava, I knew nothing about fashion or textiles or any of this. I said yes, because that's seemingly what I did in my life. And that was about 2.5 years ago. And now, as it stands, I don't know if anybody would dispute this, but I'm the foremost, in addition to our team, the foremost country experts in this type of silk and all that sort of stuff.
I think so, yeah.
It's been an interesting journey, but I mean, really, I did stumble into it. Just because I was from Chicago and people from Chicago showed up. I've now been, running a silk business for 2.5 years.
That's amazing.
And you talk about this journey, right, of the last couple of years in silk. Highs and lows along the way. I remember, was it last year when all of your silkworms died?
What?
They went extinct, right? The entire population, is that right?
So this was last May, and for our Filipino listeners, if you remember, there was a week last May, 2016, where it was 40 plus degrees for about a week straight.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It really was. It was too hot for the silkworms. Not only our silkworms, but all of the Erie silkworms that were then in the Philippines, all that same week, all died.
Whoa.
It was just too hot. And the worms are native to northeastern India, which has a bit more seasonal changes and some elevation, so it doesn't have the extreme heats that you do here. So that was just a bit too hot. We've now found ways to mitigate those heat risks. It's been quite hot lately.
Again,
but our worms are still healthy because we've got a couple passive ventilation and passive cooling systems that really keep the worms comfortable. So it was a panic, but we've got some great partners, especially in Thailand. We're working with a research university there, really on the technical side of raising the worms. And they were able to help us learn how to repopulate, keep our worms safe in the future.
Yeah, so I hope you don't mind being a classic example, but I think you're like a classic example of like an inspiration for people who want to start something but have no background, let's say, in fashion or anywhere, and they don't have enough confidence to go for something that they think they want to do because they didn't know anything about it to begin with. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like social entrepreneurs, like what you said, stumble upon just doing what they love or doing something they're passionate about without necessarily being the foremost experts yet in that field, and then you like develop yourself into becoming one. But tell us about that whole journey to getting to where you are now, aside from the worms dying. That lesson.
Let's not bring that up anymore. It was a very trying time.
Okay, I'm sorry. I hope you buried them well.
No. Yeah, they're great now. Happy, healthy
good.
Worms, making beautiful silk. It took me a while to get to the point where I am now in terms of being comfortable with who I am in this industry, in this country, trying to work through, starting a business, creating it. In the beginning, you hear, and there's all these books and everything about, entrepreneurship in general or social entrepreneurship. specifically, you're going to be working all the time. Everything is work. You have to do everything yourself. It's all you. It's all you. It's all you. It's all you. All the pressure's on you. I sort of took that to heart initially. Like, I have to do everything.
Yeah.
Right? I have to learn everything. I have to be everything for this business. I mean, I realized that, a lot of that is sort of overstating what it, sure, it's a lot of work and there's a lot of pressure. And I find myself in the middle between, what the investors are expecting as a return on their investment and what we can really do on the ground with a 100% handmade business. But it took me a while to realize that I don't have to be the expert in everything. That's where really being able to step outside yourself and ask for help, for assistance, just to ask questions. Not feeling like all the answers had to be within me.
Yeah.
To start working with other like-minded groups, whether it was in hand weaving, if it was in cassava farming, if it was in, fashion in general. It didn't all have to be on me.
Yeah.
And I think that's indicative of the struggles that industries, especially in the Philippines, face anyway. There's such a focus, and for decades now, it's been this free market capitalism, competition drives innovation, and that's how we grow.
Yeah.
But in a country like this, and I'll use the textile example because it's the most familiar to me, that competition is really what drove the textile industry out of the Philippines. The ability for countries like China, India, Indonesia, Thailand to say, hi, we can do this way cheaper, right? It makes sense. And in a business standpoint, it makes sense, but you're losing entire industries, you're losing entire skill sets. So in my own little personal way, I feel like I'm a human microcosm of that, trying to really get everybody together and collaborate again, understanding that if we can lift the industry, there's more opportunities for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not this that it has to be competitive. If you're making something, then I can't make that something. This isn't a zero-sum game. Yeah. Right? If more people are interested in buying Filipino-made textile products, then more businesses can rise. We can all do this together. And that was sort of a personal journey for me to get to my stance on the business that way. It had to be wow, we can collaborate. And there are people who are willing to, not everything has to be a secret. There's people who are willing to share. Yeah. Hey, you guys are doing this? Oh, we're doing the same thing. Let me show you how to do this. Yeah. And that was a huge step for me to not have all the pressure just beyond American from Chicago, new to the textile industry.
I like that though, because it's not just building your business, it's actually building the ecosystem. And I think that's something that we don't focus on as much, which is why we don't have much of an ecosystem around businesses, around industries here. So I think that's a great mindset to have.
Thank you.
What is replicable about the way that you're building Ambension Silk? So you're really small at the moment, right? You have worked with 2 or 3 artisans, is that right?
And how many team members do you have?
Currently, we've got 3 full-time artisans, and then we've got a couple other smaller products that we outsource to other members in the community, especially around the Enchanted Farm. Those are, bracelet makers, stuff like that. So we've got a team of about 10 that are sort of on call for that. The 3 full-time artisans, and then we've got 1 full-time farm operations manager. So he does the farming and the worm raising. He has a part-time assistant. And then we have a team of interns that come through on rotation, usually foreigners, coming through to assist the business. So yeah, still a relatively small business. If
demand for locally produced silk, eri silk really grows, how can the social impact, if you like, be multiplied? What does that model look like?
So there's 2 sides to it. One of it is a really tangible, application of our methods that helps entire ecosystems. The other one is more of a mindset change. On the farming side of things, so our worms do eat cassava leaves, right? Now cassava grows, it's native to South America, but it grows almost like a weed, not to put a negative on it, all over the Philippines. So there's a readily available food source. There's also a lot of small-scale cassava farmers who, for a number of reasons, especially in the rural landscape here, aren't getting top market price for their products, whether it's infrastructure, communication, only having access to one market, so they're sort of stuck with that price. So what we're trying to offer these small scale farmers is a way to apply their waste as a secondary income. So normally cassava farmers will cut off the leaves and oftentimes burn them, because some of the cassava leaves can have cyanide, and you don't want that getting into other stuff. So we offer them a way to recycle their waste into profit. And I hope none of our listeners are eating currently, but our worms, when they're alive, they literally, they eat and they poop. Yeah. And then they eat and they poop.
That's the life, man.
I'm jealous. They eat and they poop, then they sleep.
Oh, I love that.
They shed their skin, they wake up, they eat and they poop.
Oh, wow.
So,
apart from the shedding the skin part,
yeah, it's the life.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's kind of like a nice shower for them. I don't know.
That's probably it.
Fresh,
Yeah.
clean skin. But when you've got thousands of silkworms, you get a lot of silkworm poop.
Right.
And that can be recycled directly in as fertilizer. The excrement from the worms is actually already nitrogen rich.
Right.
So it works directly as a fertilizer, but also as a composting agent. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of communities that do sort of vermicomposting or other types of composting, it can be applied to there as well. And then finally, this is sort of we're trying to walk a fine line here. Mm-hmm. Our specific type of silk is called peace silk, ahimsa silk or peace silk in a lot of communities because you don't actually need to kill the pupa to harvest the silk.
Okay.
The other type of silk, you have to kill the pupa inside the cocoon because they spin a continuous fiber.
Yeah.
So if the moth emerges, it destroys that fiber. However, in the Philippines, there's not quite a big vegan movement yet.
Right.
That's not a focus. All natural, maybe, but in this sort of vegan landscape, there isn't much. However, the pupa, our pupa, when they're in the pupa state, they're about 80% protein. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing now is we actually remove the pupa from the cocoon. So the fiber is preserved. We remove the pupa and then we can solar dry it. Mm-hmm. And it actually lasts for months as a fowl, a chicken or a duck feed.
Okay.
The hardest things for chicken farmers, small scale chicken farmers or duck farmers to get is an organic protein source.
That is so cool.
And I appreciate that response. It still means we kill the pupa.
But where will it go if it's not killed?
And that's another thing. So, and it's hard to explain because a lot of people, no kill, which I understand that, and I get the movement. But if we let the moths,
where will
emerge
they go?
fully,
Yeah.
well, we let them live their full life cycle. They just sort of hang out. They would hang out in a caged or netted area, which is great. They can hang out with their friends.
All right.
But the dust from the feathers is actually a carcinogen.
Oh.
And also, if you let them die naturally, it attracts predators. So what we need to do with all the moths that we let live, we have to then take them out, dig a hole, burn them all, and bury them to avoid pests contaminating the area.
Yeah.
So by letting them live their full life cycle, we're actually creating a much larger environmental footprint.
Right.
So it's a balance. We'd love to say that it's a vegan product, but it's more important for us at the scale now and as we scale up in rural Filipino communities to be able to contribute to entire ecosystems.
Right.
And in providing, a large source of protein-rich, anybody who's been to a rural Filipino community, they're growing chicken somewhere, right?
Yes.
Somebody's raising chicken somewhere.
Everyone eats chicken here.
Right. So to be able to provide an organic food source, we're then contributing to another, organic business, all natural business. We're getting them high quality feeds, with less chemicals and all that. So it's really a balance. As much as we would love to put a vegan label on that, it almost seems a bit gimmicky to us at this point just to force that.
Yeah.
When really we can be making larger impacts on communities. So back to your original question, when we look at scaling from a farming aspect, the more worms you grow, the more money you can make off of selling the silk back to Ambension. More use of your waste, so you're burning off less waste. You're getting ready-made fertilizer and also a chicken or duck feed. Now, at every step of that chain for our farming, small-scale farmers can monetize. Yeah. So we provide the worms and the system, the instructions, the knowledge of how to grow them, and then they can monetize as much as they want any step of that process. They can bag up the worm excrement and sell it as fertilizer, or they can apply it to their own plants, and they can do the same with the pupa. Yeah. Right? So on the farming side, when we scale up, that's how we're looking at contributing to, an entire ecosystem where we work. Again, trying to eliminate waste as much as possible and maximize every step of the value chain. On the flip side, when we talk about social impact in terms of production, I get a lot giving tours around the farm or even explaining our business. This is, when you say social enterprise, I've a lot of times heard the response, oh, so you give jobs to poor people. Well, okay, a sweatshop gives jobs to poor people. Is that a social enterprise?
Exactly, yeah.
So we need to go past livelihoods. Right?
Absolutely.
If it's just giving jobs, even when you say I'm paying a fair wage, you're doing the bare minimum any business should do.
Yes.
So to call yourself a social enterprise, I think you need to take sort of the next step. And in our production line, some of that is a mindset change. I mentioned before about China, India, all these countries swooping in with the cheaper textiles, really driving out textile production. Some of that is a mindset issue, that Filipino made or a made in the Philippines tag means of lesser quality.
I hear that a lot in it. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I hear it all the time. Oh, this was
Yeah.
made here. Like,
Oh,
no matter
God.
what it looks like, feels like, the
I
quality,
know,
anything.
yeah.
But there's and Reese, you're probably more into this or more attuned to this. Sorry. But
Back at you,
What are you
Tom.
about to say?
there's a huge groundswell of young Filipino designers.
Mm-hmm.
It's really catching. I mean, all this Philippines Next Top Model
Yeah,
stuff.
right.
The Universe was here, so
Yes.
the design culture in the Philippines is really expanding rapidly. However, those designers at whatever scale don't have access to Filipino fabrics.
Absolutely, yeah.
You call yourself a Filipino designer, but you're using, ready-made Chinese fabrics on a big skein from the textile
Yeah.
warehouses here. So that's where we really want to change the mindsets of designers. That as a designer, you can custom make your own Filipino fabric,
Yes.
colors, patterns, everything. So your new designs are fully yours,
Yeah.
right? And fully Filipino. Now I understand an
Mm.
American, man saying this might sound a little weird, but
You're honorary Filipino.
Thank you. Maraming salamat po.
See?
But that's where we really want to start changing the mindset. That
Yeah.
made in the Philippines, Philippine made, or even handmade
Yes.
doesn't mean souvenir. Going around the country, what I've noticed when something is handmade or made in the Philippines,
Yeah.
it's in these little, ethnic souvenir shops. Oh, take home a piece of the Philippines.
Right.
Like, take home something that's beautiful.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And what, I've actually noticed this with Rags to Riches a lot, the way you present your brand. Another part of the mindset change is for social enterprises. So not only the public,
Yeah.
but social enterprises, I feel, need to start thinking differently about how we present our products. I think it's very true in the textile industry. A lot of social enterprises try to sell a story,
Mm-hmm.
right? When it's wearable, when that story is wearable, if you're just selling the story and they're not buying it because they want the product itself,
Yeah.
that story ends up at the back of a closet,
Exactly.
Right.
at the bottom of a drawer. So
Or
if
as a gift to another that will be given as another gift.
Sure.
Nobody
but
wants
even
to-
that's better because at least the story is then getting shared
Transferred, yeah.
somehow.
Mhm.
But if people are buying a piece of Ambension silk
Yeah.
because they want it in their life and they want to proudly wear it, then the story perpetuates itself.
Yeah.
So really, for us, the story is secondary. Every store, once we start pushing out into retail,
Yeah.
I can't be there, for every shawl that's sold and
Exactly,
being
yeah.
like, okay, let me tell you the story about how this was made.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work like that. So somebody needs to walk in, they need to see, and they need to feel the fabric and say, wow, I need this in my life. And I think if we as a textile industry, and I know we're tiny now and I'm speaking
Yeah.
for the whole industry, but if we as a textile industry start thinking that way, it's not just to be Filipino made. It's
Yeah.
because it's beautiful in and of itself. If we start changing the way we think about that, then you see the industry starting to grow. You see, people taking pride in their work. And you see people being creative with what's available here in the Philippines and not relying on, imported designs, imported fabrics.
Right.
So that's sort of, when you look at us scaling, those are our advocacies, both on the farming side, which is a much more tangible, applicable model to rural ecosystems,
Mhm.
but also in the mindset change that the Filipino textile industry can rise again. And no matter how large or small your business is, we all have a part to play in that. We start thinking about our products as high quality, and we
Mhm.
start working together to manifest those into actual collaborative creations for the industry.
Yeah. Speaking of having a really beautiful products, and I super resonate with what you said. When people see that it's Philippine made or handmade, they immediately say, "So why is it so expensive?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, because that's the point. It's handmade. It's made with intention. It has high quality, so of course it will command a high price point as compared to other textiles you will see that will command the same price point. So it's just a mindset change. But what is so special about your silk? Could you walk us through the whole process and how? I mean, listeners will be listening in on this, so try to be as descriptive as possible when it comes to describing your textiles.
It's really pretty.
Okay.
That's
question, yeah, we got-
Done. Yeah.
No, now Erie silk. This is so difficult to try and explain verbally without the ability to touch. Erie silk is different from the silk all of the listeners right now are probably thinking of.
Yeah.
It's called Bombex Mori. A lot of people say Chinese silk or Thai silk. When you think of silk, or Hermès from France,
Yeah.
or Hermès,
Mhm.
however you pronounce it, I'm not French. That's the silk you normally think of,
Yeah.
which, regardless of the scale that's produced at, still commands a very high price, right? So it makes it inaccessible, even especially at a handmade level. It makes
Yeah.
it inaccessible to most consumers
Yeah.
worldwide. Aerie silk, it's different in its nature in that instead of a continuous fiber, which is what makes the other type of silk so fine, our worms spin many small fibers,
Right.
and then we actually put those together and spin them into a yarn. So we have our own, hand-spun yarn collection, but then we also work with the Thai group I was talking about before to machine spin our yarn, because the technology doesn't exist in the Philippines yet, which is another thing we need to improve. So it gives us a handmade product that's a bit more versatile to work with.
Yeah.
It's a little less fickle. We've got some options with one yarn size. We can do many different thicknesses, patterns, styles, all that. It's a little more limiting in the other type of silk. It's a bit faster, and all these things drive the cost down a bit. So we want a product that's accessible. Like you were talking about before, it still commands a premium price. It's handmade. Whenever people, especially when we're at the farm, whenever people question the cost, and I show them our costing, they're like, oh.
Right? Yeah. And they see the process. For 10 hours. Exactly.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
So once that becomes clear, it's very obvious. But again, when you're retailing, you can't really show that. Handmade, great. There's no concept of time and what goes into doing something like that. Then comes the feel, the seeing and the feeling. And this is what I think makes our silk unique here in the Philippines. One, the type of products we're creating. So we've got a line of stoles, which is it's not a very common word, but it's in between a scarf and a shawl.
Okay, yeah.
Say that word again.
Stole.
A stole.
S-T-O-L-E.
Come on, Tom. You don't know what that is. That's okay.
Hey, I'm kind of out of my comfort zone right now.
Welcome to the last 2.5 years of my life. But it's kind of in between a larger shawl and a smaller scarf.
Yeah.
And the reason we did this, our silk retains the thermal properties of the other type of silk, meaning that it's insulating, but also breathable. I tested this because it's hard to test in aircon here, and there's never cold weather here. When I was back in Chicago, it was about 8 degrees.
Yeah.
So I threw one of our stoles on and went cruising around town, and it's really interesting, the thermal properties. So it was insulating. Yeah. Where I was wearing it, I felt comfortable, but not overheated. So it was almost cooling in a good way. Still, it's still ventilated. It's water wicking, because when you look at what silk is, it's a cocoon.
Yes.
And the cocoon is meant to protect, the pupa inside from water, from temperature, from all these things. So when you put it on a human, it has those same properties, right? Yeah. So instead of protecting the pupa, it's now protecting, your neck from big changes, from humidity, from all these things. So it commands the same thermal properties, just at a more accessible price. Yeah. And we did the stoles specifically for the Philippines. People always say, why would you ever need a scarf in the Philippines? Now, in their mind, I get this a lot in America, but also here too. It's too hot here. Yeah. And I always counter back, have you ever gone into a mall? Yeah. Have you ever been to the cinema here?
Oh, right? A bus.
Yeah,
a bus.
Aircon bus.
Yeah.
But we're in a culture, we're in a society here where you're in and out of aircon.
Yep.
Yeah.
All day. If you live in any metro area, in the rural settings, not so much, but in any metro area, you're in and out of aircon 30 times a day. So you need a product that can keep up with that, that's versatile enough to be comfortable in the heat and also keep you warm in the cool. So that's where we went with the stole. It can be worn as a scarf. It's small enough to be hung from a bag. Yeah. In that stylish new sort of sash way that everybody's wearing it. Okay. When you get into the mall.
I love hearing Chris talk about fashion.
I know.
I'm getting there. But when you walk into the bus, when you walk into the cinema, you can still drape it. It's large enough that you can drape it, over yourself and keep yourself warm. So that's really where we think we found a unique niche in the Philippine market. It is handmade. We are battling against, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes, listeners, 100% pashmina in SM malls that sells for 200 pesos.
Oh, okay.
It's a tough, it's tough to compete against those markets. But wear our products for a day and tell me you can't tell the difference and how adaptable it is to this climate and environment. So I think that's what really makes the finished products unique on our end.
So Chris, listening to you, I noticed you're very good at storytelling. You're very good at explaining the process. And it seems like when you talk about the process of how it's made, you get really excited. I wish the listeners can see your face right now. It's just... Yeah,
Chris is not normally an excitable kind of guy.
Is he not?
There's a real transfer when he's talking about silk.
Yeah, but when it shifts a little bit to fashion, he's glazes over a little bit and talks about it. But talking about the techniques and the tools and the process and the quality just lights you up. But I am curious because you're so good at telling the story and just selling the whole idea to people. And right now, I want to buy that pile of silk beside me.
Sold.
Like right now. Yeah.
You all heard it. I've got witnesses. Yeah.
Yes. So, what was your background? Where did you, I mean, I know you came from Chicago, but what was your background?
Where to start with that? Well, I actually, in Chicago, I was a youth worker for about 6 years. I worked with teenagers in the community. That's actually sort of in a roundabout fashion what led me to the Philippines. Not because of the work, but because of one of my coworkers. When I left that position, I did my master's work in the Netherlands, and I studied international non-governmental organizations.
Okay.
And then as well international relations.
Mm-hmm.
My academic mind loves, theory and how states interact and countries interact and politics and all that. My body and my heart is on the ground.
Yeah.
So going to work for a think tank in an office, writing reports, never, in
Yeah.
an academic setting, I love it, but I need to be on the ground,
Yeah.
having some knowledge of international relations and how those things work really helped give me a bigger picture in terms of how market sways work and, country interactions and how, small political encounters can affect businesses on the ground and all that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. After the grad work, I actually went to work for an NGO in Tanzania. We were building these self-sustaining agriculture, education, and medical facilities in rural Tanzanian villages. So, water reclamation, solar energy, all these things, access to the internet, finally, for these people. Great project. I just couldn't contribute the way I wanted to. And the reason for this, I showed up on site. I went to the community. I traveled to Tanzania because I wanted to work with the communities we were supposed to be, working with. And I would show up on site, and all of the construction work would stop, and they would demand, 2, 5, 10 times the pay because of my skin color.
Okay.
Right? So finally, after trying to work through this, they're like, hey, why don't you just not come to the sites anymore? That would be best.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
like, cool. So I ended up sitting in an office in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, writing grant proposals.
Oh, okay.
That's not what I traveled to Tanzania for.
Right.
So that had sort of run its course. I actually I came to Manila the first time for a wedding. A friend married a Filipina.
Yeah.
I was in the wedding, so I made the trip from Tanzania. When I got here, I really liked the energy, the vibrancy, the welcoming nature of the people. All these things are pretty typical first impression of the Philippines that most people give. So now go back to my youth work. I worked with a Filipino American there, and I immediately called her up and said, hey, do you know of anything in the Philippines that might work for a guy with my skill set and background? She and her family have been very involved in Gawad Kalinga for a decade. So she got me in touch with Tony Moloto and the Enchanted Farm. And I mentioned before that I sort of fly by the seat of my pants a lot. I was sending emails with Tony Moloto and some of the farm teams saying, hey, appreciate us getting in touch. If I come to the farm, what sort of work would I be doing? Where do you need help? How do you see me fitting in? Response would come back, just come and see the farm.
Yeah, that's classic.
Okay, thank you, sir. So regarding that, what would the living arrangements be? How would this work? What should I bring? How can I contribute? Just come and see the farm. So after 5 or 6 email exchanges like that.
Well, you were in Tanzania at the time.
Yeah, in Tanzania. On a whim, I said, you know what, that's, I guess, enough information for me. So again, just why not on a whim? I bought my ticket and took off to Manila to work at this farm. So, that's sort of the background that got me here. However, the INGO studies and work, it actually sort of disenfranchised me with the whole NGO idea anyway. Studying it made me feel a little weird about the whole system. You look at some of these giant NGOs and their presidents or chairmen or whatever they call it, making 6+ figures.
Wow.
You look at where like 8% of what people donate to these giant charities and foundations actually go to the work.
Yeah.
Really?
The rest is overheads, and it was
How'd they get away with that? Isn't there a policy against that?
Well, except that your donations are tax exempt, so you feel good about yourself.
Right,
you get it.
Right.
Or tax deductible, not tax exempt. Tax deductible.
Yeah.
So it's sort of this. I felt like it was sort of this international scam.
Yeah.
Sort of. A lot of them do a lot of great work. I'm not anybody who works for NGOs.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
but the feeling I got was that this isn't quite right. It's a bunch of people in their ivory headquarters, moving money around. And that's what the feeling I got, even, once I was sitting at a desk just writing grant proposals.
Yeah.
And my NGO life was just, how do I move money to certain places? I wanted to be working with people.
Yes.
So that's what really, has been making me stay, that I have a team, that we've really built this together over the last 2+ years, working with people, understanding their needs, their competencies, how we can grow as a team, we can learn to communicate regardless of, language barriers. What does it mean to communicate with a team outside of language? How do we understand each other as human beings? That's where the background sort of, I saw what I didn't want to do and didn't want to be. Yeah. And that led me now to, sticking it out, cleaning worm poop.
Yeah. So let's look at that, because you're clearly doing something now that you're a lot more passionate about than you were previously. But I'm interested to know some of the challenges you go through. I have my own perspective on this, of course. But as a foreigner setting up a business or managing a business here in the Philippines and working on the ground with community partners, what are some of the really big challenges and sort of learning experiences that you've had along the way?
My biggest challenge, and this might not be the same for everybody because we're not necessarily unique. The nature of our social enterprise with the investors and the ground team, that's been my biggest challenge, is managing expectations on both sides. I've got these investors who, say, give me 100 products in a week. And I'm like, we have 3 human beings making these, right? Well, we need it. We need to do the revenue and we need to make the products.
Wow.
Well, here's what I need then to make that happen. Oh, no. Do it with what you have. I can't work these people 200 hours a week because, I can't do that. So, and the investors are great, and you're listening. But I understand. They want to make the business grow. They're coming from a good place with it. They're pushing. Let's get revenue. Let's make more products. Let's do that. So trying to manage those expectations with people who aren't on the ground here working with the team every day, seeing how much we've struggled to figure these things out. I mean, hand weaving is a very personal thing. I understand it conceptually, but I can't feel it. Yeah. Our weavers they're all unique. Their weaves are different. Their moods affect weaving. Yes. Right? So just to look at it as, just make the products, right? And this is a big picture of a big part of what we're trying to do, or what we're trying to understand and how we're trying to grow. So managing expectations on both those sides, difficult from the farm standpoint, and we really understand each other much better now than we did in the past. Our team on the ground would think, okay, we've got American investors, so just anything we need this and this and this, and just spend the money, just do this. We're like, whoa. Like, we're still a business, right? Yes. And that's, that was a difficult thing to sort of switch their minds over, that this isn't charity. Yes. We're not throwing money at you and you're going to do some fun stuff and we're all happy, right? We need to make this sustainable. We need to make this grow. We need to, make it a real business. And that was actually once we turned that corner, it was a huge challenge trying to not get them, but to all of us grow together to where weaving was something that they did because they're passionate about it and they think it's beautiful and they want to create new things and they want to innovate. The other big challenge is trying to overcome this employee mindset. I've noticed in working here that initially when we first started this, the team was all, yes, boss, yes, boss, yes, boss. And I'm like, okay, tone it down. Like, we're a team. We can do this together. You don't have to call me boss all the time. And they just wanted to follow. Like, I give the direction and they do. And that's it. Questioning, right? I mean, I don't know what I'm talking about. People always ask, how did you learn about the worms? How did you learn about all this weaving? Dude, you guys don't know how to use Google? Right? I mean, it's like I don't know. Like, we stumbled through this whole thing. There was a moment, and I wish the listeners could see me now because I'm dressed the way this story is going to unfold. So at the Enchanted Farm, you do have to give a lot of talks. There's a lot of guests. There's a lot of events. You get up there and you're talking about your business and projecting yourself, and everything, always be closing. So you're always trying to promote the business and represent the business when you're up there. Right now I'm sitting here in one of these thermal GKEF polo shirts.
It's nice though.
Shirt. Thank you. And I wear it well, I know. Okay. But, normally at the farm, because of the nature of the work and what we're doing and that there's no aircon or anything, I'm usually in really, grimy, grubby clothes.
Yeah, you don't look great.
Yeah, it's good. I hear that often. But I'm not wearing nice clothes to go, trek through the mud or clean up the worm trays and stuff like that. And I was going to give one of these, myriad talks that we always give. And I was wearing sort of, dirty jeans and a dirty polo shirt. Just because you're in the middle of things, and I don't think about changing to go talk to a group at the farm because it's at the farm. And the ladies on our team collectively, they pulled me aside and all right, I'm going to go do my talk. And they're like, wait. You're going to wear that? And I'm like, what do you...
Like, this is like an intervention?
Honestly, really it was. They cornered me and they're like, you're going to wear that? And I'm like, yeah, this is what I was like. Well, and now they say boss as like a joke whenever they're trying to get their way. They call me boss. So
Yeah.
just usurping everything. Boss, we're a fashion brand. You can't go on stage wearing that. You need to look nice. You have to go change. And I'm like, seriously? They're like, yes, you can't look like that and talk about fashion. Like, sorry. And they made me go change my attire. Now, it seems like a small moment, but that was really the moment that I knew that they had ownership over what we were doing.
Yes.
And that's what it took time to build. It's not a job. It's not, they're as big a part of what we've created as anyone else in the team, as any of the investors, as myself. And in that moment, I knew that they weren't thinking about the paycheck. They weren't thinking about the work or the hours. They were thinking about how we present ourselves as a company, as a brand. They were thinking about the future. What does my attire mean for how we're presented and what can come of that in the future? And that's the moment sort of it all clicked collectively as a team. And then they had ownership over everything we were doing in the future. When you saw sort of this boss-employee relationship really disappear, and we worked on collaborating and how to solve problems together. And it wasn't just the common Filipino yes to every question.
Yeah.
They started fighting me. Oh, no, we can't do that. Here's what we need
great.
to do. This is going to be better. Let's do this.
Right.
And that's when we really saw, explosive growth in the creativity, in the efficiency, in the partnerships we could create and what we could produce that was really a market-ready product and consistency and all these things. That came from ownership over the process.
Yeah.
And ever since that day, you now have, I believe, 2 very fashionable shirts that you rotate, right, for special occasions.
I do, yes.
Yeah.
That is a lot. It's more than one.
No.
So
Exactly.
You have 2.
Yeah.
You know how I feel right now is that if Rags to Riches has a spirit animal, it's your company. Like, if I have a spirit animal, it's probably you. We should, our team should hang out more. It's just amazing how a lot of these things are so similar, and a lot of the pains and the challenges and even the successes and milestones just sound so familiar and warm, I wish more people can, go through the process.
And it's, from a personal standpoint, that's lovely to hear. Let's chat.
Yeah,
We'll get our teams together and, have a party. Fine. From a professional standpoint, we need more attitudes like that. Your story sounds familiar.
Yeah.
We should get together and talk about what we can all do together. I feel like here in the Philippines, but in the world in general, it's sort of this, I have success, let's make sure nobody else can have success. It's our success. How can we push everyone else away?
Yeah.
You notice it in the mall culture here. We've got, all these giant, 3 of the top 10 biggest malls in the world are in Manila. This is a developing country and it's poor, but wait, what? But this mall culture and this desire for, only foreign brands to come in and populate these malls, you've got these big, pushing everyone away. We got our success. We built our empire, right? We've got development, we've got malls, we've got property, we've got all this stuff. So just let's make sure nobody else can ever counter that. And I feel that here. There's really this effort to keep everyone else down.
Yeah.
That's cute. If you do a sorry store, neat. We won't bother you anything more than that, and we're gonna crush you. Yeah. And it, we have to start working together to combat that as an industry, as a textile industry or any other industry here. We need to start fighting. If you want things to scale in this country, we've got to work on. I don't know who listens to this, but we got to work on breaking up an energy monopoly. Right? There's a lot of things that are happening. That a lone voice, you got to start somewhere. So it's good to start with a lone voice, but a lone voice probably can't accomplish.
Yeah.
But if industries are coming together and working together, I think you start to see real change and many, many more enterprises, social enterprises, tech companies, whatever it is, rising from the ashes of this sort of consumer, ultra import driven economy.
Yeah.
Not to make a big...
Yeah.
That's good. I like it when you make a big fuss out of the little things that I say. But it's good. It's good because I think that is what's lacking in the world today. I think, I regret it a little bit that this is a podcast. I wish it was a Facebook Live so that people can see how you're, making grand gestures and, how excited we all are. Because I'm really excited to, move forward with a partnership with you guys and a friendship with this whole industry. Because I think, that's what we need. We can never scale if we're alone.
Let's do it. Can we get an audible high five?
It. Yes.
That's right.
There. Yeah, you heard that. Let's this involve Tom. No, we are
right,
partnering as well.
I said, I'm just, I'm just soaking it all up. I'm feeling the
pretty
energy.
face on the podcast.
Yeah, the pretty face. But that's super cool because we're in partnership with Mad as well.
Yep.
And now we're gonna come up with a partnership with you guys as well. It's just
Yeah.
Partnerships
Super
everywhere.
exciting.
Yeah.
So Chris, how can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more about Bension? And is there any way in which people can get involved? Are you looking at volunteers in any area?
Collaborations.
Yep.
Always collaborations. If there's anyone
Yes.
in any aspect of fashion, textiles, I mean, from accessory makers, shoemakers, garment makers, anything like that, hit us up. I'll give you the details on that in a bit. We're always for exploring new ways to use our yarn, to use the silk, to apply it. In terms of, obviously visiting the Enchanted Farm and watching our artisans, do their masterworks is an experience in itself. Short of that, actually stay on the lookout. I think August, we're doing a launch with Anthill Fabric Gallery in Cebu. We're launching our necktie and bow tie line there with them. And then in September, I believe, we're going to have some pop-ups in and around the metro area for the exact reason that we want people to be able to see and touch what I'm talking about here without having to go all the way to the Enchanted Farm. It's not that far. You should go, people. In terms of getting in touch with us, we have a website that's sort of being built right now. It's in progress. That's www.ambension.com.
How do you spell that so that everybody can go for it?
AMBENSION, Ambension.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. They're both at Ambension Silk. And that's an easy way to get in touch with us, either through the Facebook or the Instagram Messenger. Actually, I'm 36 years old, so I sometimes feel...
you don't look it.
Thank you. You're lying through your teeth. But feel like I'm a bit of a dinosaur in this new digital age. But actually, most of our random orders or custom orders that we get are from people seeing the Instagram post.
Yes.
So it's been interesting trying to coordinate, design specifications over Instagram Messenger. But we do try and be as active, and we'll respond as quickly as possible to inquiries on there. So don't hesitate to give us a follow or, check out our pages and our stuff there.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, sure. Thank you guys.
Hey, thanks for listening. So you spent a good few minutes of your life listening to us. And we would love to hear from you too. We are always looking for inspiring stories of people who are doing good from where they are. So we would love it if you could share these stories with us. Send us a message through Facebook or Instagram. You can find us by searching for In Good Company Podcast on Facebook or at In Good Company PH on Instagram. This podcast is brought to you by Mad Travel, Rags to Riches, and Things That Matter. Hosted by me, Reese Fernandez-Ruiz, and Tom Graham. This podcast is edited by our awesome intern, Alani Pagulayan, with research and marketing done by Romano Santos, and music by Kevin MacLeod. And of course, this podcast will not be possible without you, our listeners and advocates. We are in good company with you.